Dun 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 dun. Welcome everybody. Welcome to LSU Odyssey. A momentary lapse of reason while we welcome everyone into the show. Links, links, links. How's everyone doing? It is Saturday. My boy Sage is flying around outside. I mean, it took like pulling teeth to get Chelsea to finally wake up and watch Sage for a minute because she was just enjoying a very long nap. And I'm like, hey, it's almost time for the show. I know it's very relaxing. She's getting to that part in the pregnancy where it's really physically brutal, but it's like we got to be consistent. We got to have these shows out when our people are wanting them. So big shout out to Chelsea, my love, for always sacrificing, and it's taken her a bit of an adjustment to understand what this is all about and what it kind of is going to take. Um, and so I really appreciate her patience and I'm not sure how to say it, but just like she's been amazing with everything. So many changes and crazy ups and downs and peaks and valleys and a lot of things she really didn't expect us to do. So it was like, oh wow. And then a lot of times she was like, oh wow, you had a big mistake there, a mistake that most people don't really recover from. Oh, you're screwed. This dream is dead, and then we'd kind of climb back out of it like time after time. And so she's more than anybody been like, oh my god, like this is insanity, like. And so she's really been there for us. And while she has her own type of passion, she has her own type of creative job that she's pushing for, and that's as a professional special effects makeup artist doing the ghoulish of the ghoulish monsters, the sickening freakazoids that you see at the coolest haunted houses, coolest movies. Chelsea is responsible for a lot of it. She also builds mascots, um, including some from the biggest football teams across the country. We're talking like the Raiders were a client, the USC Trojans were a client for the place she works at. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the name, but so yeah, she does. She has a very dedicated career as well, but she's watching Sage so much while we're able, to work and kind of do what we're doing, which is a day job plus this. And so I just really wanted to. She was pissed at me, kind of like, can't you just watch Sage going down the stuff and do this show? And I'm kind of like, you can't really do a show with kids screaming and splashing water in the background. Do you not get that? So there's kind of like a moment of, you know, you know what I'm talking about if you've been there in a relationship longer than, 5 minutes, 5 years. Um, and if you haven't, then you're probably someone who can't really work well enough with people to be in any sort of relationship because there's going to be those moments where it's like basically F you. And, but, you say it and then you get past it, it's not something that festers or whatever. You talk about it and you say, I think it's bullshit when this happens. You know, she's always been someone who's had our back with all of this. And I absolutely love her. And I cannot wait for our second child. Her, what she's really been waiting for after we had Sage. She didn't really have a preference when we had Sage. She just was like, this is crazy. And then after we had Sage, she's like, I love having a boy, but I really want to have a girl because it's probably gonna be my last. Let's have a girl. And it was like a stroke of the wand. We have a girl, so I'm glad for her for that too. Like this is a very important pregnancy for her with that, and I'm just very very grateful for her. Saturday, Saturday, Saturday. You got soccer starting. Starting all over the world, from England, Italy, Germany, Spain. Of course, we watched the Barcelona Mallorca game, which was just a weird, wild game, and you just have the feeling of sports is in the air. At least from my perspective, as someone who watches a lot of European football and then college football. That's my two main. Those are my sports, and when you know soccer season is starting, football season is starting, you know that football is right around the freaking corner. And I don't know about you, but I'm literally like buzzing with the energy. And I'm not just saying that to kind of like, "Oh, yeah, man, yeah, bro, yeah, bro, yeah," trying to be some like frat boy prick. I'm really like, I not hype. I'm hype, bro. I'm hype. Like people don't even know proper grammar anymore. But um, we are hyped. We are very hyped. Hyped. We're so hype. I'm so hype. I'm so white. Oh, you know, it's right around the corner. It is basically here. I mean, we still have what, 2 weeks? That sucks. That sucks. We still have like taken like 13 days left, but we are right on that precipice. We are right almost around that bend. You can taste it. LSU football, LSU versus Clemson. We're not Alabama. We're not Georgia. Maybe Georgia has actually done better with this lately. But usually these are the type of teams Ohio State, who schedule really soft games. Of course, Ohio State finally schedule a tough one with Texas, for to start this season. So that's good for them finally to kind of step up to the plate. But usually it is a cupcake matchup to kind of build yourself into the season, right? Well, well, LSU does not do that. LSU does it the hard way. And I'm sorry, I kind of don't I kind of love that. I kind of wouldn't want it any other way. That right out of the gates, guys, right out of the gates, we are facing a team that has the same type of goals, same type of aspirations, maybe even the same type of talent level that we have. I don't think so. I think that LSU is a more talented team than Clemson. Am I biased in that observation, though? I think you would probably argue that I am biased in that observation. But what I see at LSU is a team that, if they aren't competing for a spot in that Final Four, if they aren't knocking on that door of winning a championship this year with everything they have, everything that is aligned, it won't just be stunning. It will cause something that I believe will reverberate at LSU for quite a long time, whether Brian Kelly is ousted or not after this season. I seeing Brian Kelly ousted after the season is almost unthinkable, right? There's just Brian Kelly has so much consistency in his career as a coach that, whether you want to argue about his championship pedigree or not, Brian Kelly, the thing you can't really argue about with him is that his teams have always been consistently in that winning upper echelon. They've always punched up. Cincinnati, he turned Cincinnati into a powerhouse. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but Jason Kelsey, Travis Kelsey were both recruited and played for Brian Kelly. Um, the amount of different players that played for Brian Kelly, some of the names before as well, is quite impressive. And I think he's now at LSU has access to an altogether potentially better level of football player. And if you can't maximize that in this season with all of this alignment from Austin Thomas cutting the checks, making the numbers, and making sure the roster is perfect from the general management perspective, from Scott Woodward being your athletic director. Blake Baker, you almost lost him at the end of last year, supposedly, according to Billy Embody, saying he reported that Blake Baker's going to Tulane as the head coach. It never happened, but I think it could have been milliseconds away from going that way. There was a few people who decided to stay at their jobs, and that made that not happen. We could have lost Blake Baker, but then we got Brad Davis in his 5th season as offensive line coach. Alex Atkins paid however much to coach the tight ends and be the run game coordinator, one of the highest paid assistants as well. Blake Baker, for sure, the highest paid assistant in the college football. Bo Davis the year before, the highest paid assistant in college football. We lose him after a year. I actually think, in my opinion, we upgrade from Bo Davis when we got Kyle Williams. I know that sounds crazy, but I think Kyle Williams is the right coach for this group. Maybe not the best, but I think he's the right coach. And you see their dogged mentality with that. You've got all these pieces together. Frank Wilson on staff, still kicking ass, still recruiting at a high level, but he's got that vibe, that mindset, that mentality. He's going to give you one of the best pregame speeches you've ever freaking heard. You've got this electric linebacking core led by both Weeks brothers, healthy, back, ready to go. A season of alignment for them where they're having their chance to start alongside each other against Clemson week 1, and they also have a third brother on the roster as well. Garrett Nussmeier waiting how long? 2021, 2022, 2023 to get to this 2-year shot. 3 seasons to wait for this 2-year shot, and here he is. And he's going to fight through some pain to have to get through it. And my God, are we going to be rooting for him every step of the way? You have all of these type of symbols on this team of guys who fought through real adversity, real intense adversity. From Nussmeier, Aaron Anderson, he literally was a shade away from tearing his ACL at Alabama, had, I believe it was a meniscus issue, and all these other sorts of knee issues, was out his entire freshman year except for like 9 snaps. And I think had 1 target his way, 0 catches. Basically did nothing in that season for Alabama. Comes to LSU, and in that high-flying offense of 2023, he was actually the loose end that was never tied up. In a room that had Malik, Brian, Kyron, rest in peace, and people can say it was just Malik and Brian, but Lacey had 7 touchdowns that year too, including big scores against Auburn, Alabama. He was awesome that year. And except for against A&M, the drops against A&M were just brutal. But now you had Chris Hilton Jr. even ascending over Aaron Anderson. Aaron Anderson was barely on that radar in 2023. Comes back into 2024, becomes the leading receiver for the team, the most clutch guy. When Nussmeier had to have it, who was he throwing the football to? Aaron Anderson. 16 catches on 3rd or 4th down. 3 of his 5 touchdowns came on 3rd or 4th down, including, I know it, that big moment to win against Ole Miss in overtime. Man,
You've got guys all over this roster who fought through adversity of the highest order, not just losing their friend, in Kyron Lacy, who we just mentioned to go. They're going into this season knowing former teammate and someone that was really beloved. People on the internet can say whatever the hell they want, and some of them may go to hell for some of the stuff they say. It's so evil what they say about the dead after they've gone. But I'm going to say what I know for a fact, and for a fact, Kyron Lacy, whether you loved him or hated him, whatever you want to say, Kyron Lacy was absolutely loved by his teammates. Everyone who played with him loved Kyron Lacy. So whether you want to admit that or not, whether you like hearing that or not, I don't really care, because that's the truth. And it feels good to say that, and it feels good to acknowledge that, because these young men went through a lot of hell watching what happened and seeing his family going through that. And so you want to see success on the other side for some of these guys because of things like the loss of Kyron Lacy or Tamarcus Cooley. Even, yes, he fixed this woman's tire, but he posted on Twitter not too long ago saying that he lived in the back of a car and was homeless at one point, Tamarcus Cooley. And I've been wanting to get an interview with him to discuss this and kind of like get his story out there, because it's such an incredible, inspiring story. Someone who went from living in the back of his car, that's his words directly. I'm not taking him out of context. That's exactly what he said. He lived out of the back of his car, I'm guessing before NC State, or maybe his first year at NC State. Then he starts getting some NIL kicking in because he's so good at NC State. And his brother, I know, was a player as well, I think at Georgia Tech. And so Tamarcus Cooley's gone through potential homelessness to get where he is, climbing all the way from NC State clear to LSU, becoming the number 2 rated transfer portal safety in the country at one point. You've got guys all over this roster. I mean, you could even argue Whit Weeks has the adversity of his injury, his dislocated fibula and ankle, which he suffered in the final game of the 2024 season. Of course, on New Year's Eve, or was it New Year's Day, against Baylor. And even he has that adversity. He's having to get days off and stuff like that. It's been almost across the board adversity for a lot of these guys. Chris Hilton Jr., what can we say? How many seasons has he gone through where these injuries have kept him from the promised land? And we've seen the flashes. Freshman year, walk-off 81-yard bomb against K-State. We've seen these flashes all throughout his career of just unbelievable plays. 9 of his 26 career LSU receptions went for over 40 yards. 9. 9. 9 of his 26 career receptions go for over 40 plus yards. We mapped out each and every one. It wasn't hard to do because there wasn't as many as you would think with Chris Hilton Jr. being at LSU for so long. There wasn't so many catches. But what I did see was just big play after big play after big play. Really, there wasn't many catches of his that were less than like 15 yards. Like ridiculous big play potential from Chris Hilton Jr. And he has barely scratched the surface of what is possible. He could have a 15 touchdown season this year, and I would not be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked. Not one bit. I mean, Barry Brown not having a quarterback at Kentucky and being as good as he is, that's another level of adversity as well. Some of the quarterbacks that he played with at Kentucky, quite the adversity. So what am I saying in saying all of this? that this is a team of guys who know how to fight. Harold Perkins, who, he should have been in the NFL by now. Well, he's got a lot of hunger and desire, and there's a lot of make it or break it energy about so many players and even coaches on this team. A lot of personality, a lot of intensity, a lot of just complete fire from some of these guys, because they know if it doesn't happen this year, when's it going to happen? For a guy like Brian Kelly, the head coach at LSU, everything's invested, everything's going his way. Outside of a top 4 finish, where LSU kind of belongs, really, not kind of, like definitely. I don't accept that as being a success with everything you've invested, everything you've built for this situation. You hung on to Nussmeier for season after season, kept him on roster for this opportunity. You have to not only protect him and preserve him, you have to make sure that this is the season where he wins this. It's basically on his shoulders to win or lose this season. You give him that freedom with the type of loyalty he's shown LSU. And so that's what I see when I look at this team. There is a lot of characters, a lot of personalities on this roster of guys who've been on the fringes maybe at LSU. And they've shown their loyalty time after freaking time. And now it's time after time. Well, now it's their time. What's going to happen there? I feel like this is a team that is primed and ready for a big run, to make finally at LSU. First time since 2019. I mean, you felt like a glimmer of that in 2022, a little bit. In 2023, for the first half of the season, there was kind of a feeling, and then that Alabama game just destroyed all of that, which is kind of typical. But this is a season where you feel like game by game, it's going to be a roller coaster of a ride, and that this is a team that has a lot of potential goals that can be reached here. It's not a stretch to see Garrett Nussmeier at the Heisman ceremony. It's not a stretch. It's not a stretch to see a guy like Whit Weeks winning the Butkus Award, leading the country in tackles or something like that. Led the SEC in solo tackles. It's not a stretch to see Brian Kelly finally get over that hump and say a big F you to his haters. People who hate us, I actually have a lot in common with Brian Kelly regarding that. There's a lot of people who just seem to love to hate us. And yes, I wasn't responsible for, a certain incident that happened in Notre Dame, something like that, on a level like that. But people who kind of just blame these unforeseen things without kind of sick stuff. But point is, I can see a lot of why, from Brian Kelly's perspective, of why he is the way he is, a little guarded and stuff. He is so hated by some corners of the college football loving population. I don't know why. I remember this back when he was coaching Notre Dame in the national championship game that season, because that was the first season I really remembered him. And oh yeah, I kind of remembered him from Cincinnati a few years before. Okay, this guy. And you just remembered him having his face stroking, just caked in red, screaming on the sidelines about something. Just, like he looked like Barney Rubble, like losing his Barney Rubble on meth sometimes on the sidelines. It was crazy. And when he left Notre Dame, bam, he gets kind of this makeover of Louisiana SEC cool, of chill. And his first year coming out of the gates, a lot of success. Go to the first SEC title game for LSU in 5 years. Or sorry, 3 years, and only the second since 2011. And so, big accomplishments, big expectations. You win a Heisman with Garrett. I mean, with Garrett Nussmeier, getting ahead of ourselves there. You win a Heisman with Jaden Daniels as your starting quarterback. We'll just say it like this: you won a Blitnikoff that was robbed, but really, Malik Neighbors won that thing with another LSU receiver on the same offense, and Brian Thomas Jr. should have probably been second on that list. You've had how many multiple top 5 picks? You've had Jaden Daniels go top 5. You've had Will Campbell go top 5. Malik Neighbors in this go number 6 overall. Jaden Daniels, of course, number 2 overall. I would probably mention that already, but you've got so many indicators of LSU have to be successful under Kelly, surely, right? Everything's going in this direction that success is imminent with all of this investment, all of these great transfers coming in. Second year starting quarterback. What could be the issue this season? Is it going to be coaching? That would be shocking. You've got all the coaching back in the right places. Corey Raymond coaching the DBs. Lance Guidry, a former defensive coordinator, is basically a consultant with your DBs and your safeties to help Jake Olson. Blake Baker, your defensive coordinator and your linebacking coach. Kyle Williams, your defensive line. Cortez Hankton, your receivers coach. I mean, okay. Room to room, you could argue certain things, certain issues have reared their head. But you can also argue, have they truly had the dogs to really maximize and optimize their coaching philosophy or setups? And maybe the guys that LSU had before were good, but couldn't quite get to the level that they should have been at, right? Maybe this year LSU have an upgrade on those kind of players. You think? Maybe LSU this year have a different grade of talent than we've seen in a long time. And that's the thing, is LSU have never lost this individual talent brilliance throughout this whole time. We've had, top 5 picks even in these dormant years. But make no mistake that national eyes have started to accept that LSU defenses are terrible. National eyes have already started to accept that LSU are soft defensively. LSU are soft up front on the offensive line and defensive line. LSU are soft in the trenches. Who would have believed that? I mean, it's got to change, and it's got to change now. And whether LSU beat Clemson or not, as long as we show that type of physicality, that type of fight, that type of mad dog intensity, that's fine by me, because then I know we're gonna be in it in the long haul. And you might lose a game here, you might lose a game there, but this team's gonna be really something hellish to play against. That's the thing, is LSU stopped being a team that you did not want to play against. And Death Valley needs to be that stadium, that environment that no one wants to play in. Because I know no one wants to talk about this, but let's be realistic here. Alabama turned Death Valley into a funeral parlor last year, and they did it quick. There have been teams that have done this in Death Valley in recent years. Not just Alabama. Okay. That cannot happen this season. We cannot just come out against Florida week 3 and get owned. This is it goes from the fans needing to have that intensity, that old school environment, and the players will follow in suit. And I understand the fans also say, hey, the players need to do that, and then we will follow suit. Both are acceptable as long as everyone's in that energy of pulling in the right direction, pulling in the same direction. Because I think you're going to see an old school LSU defense again. It's not going to be as old school as you may expect or hope or desire it to be, but in comparison to recent years, my God, I think this defense, I will be shocked if this defense is not at least ranked in the top 50 by the end of the season. In fact, with who you have on that roster, that coaching staff, it is a crime. It is a crime if LSU is ranked anywhere outside of the top 50. And so as we kind of go through the season preview, we're just kind of setting this up for our major, game by game article that's about to come out this week, where we've gone through every damn game on the schedule. And we're going to give you a prediction like we do every single year. You can look it up, our 2024 season preview, our 2023 season preview, our 2022. It goes all the way back to 2018, I believe. And they're right there on LSUODYSSEY.com. And it's very interesting to see. 2020 is the most embarrassing one. We thought that we could actually get close to winning a championship in 2020. And I think, we had Jamar Chase, all these guys, Tyler Shelvin, all these different guys, and then the pandemic happened. So you got to keep that in mind too. The opt-outs happened, but I really thought that we had so many passing weapons that it was just like too much. We're just going to destroy everybody. But that's what I'm worried about with this LSU team. Are we too top heavy as far as we got all these stars, all this icing on the cake, but we don't have the establishment, the structure, the substance of the offensive line of really good backbone, rushing the football, controlling games, being able to get on the front foot, score on that first drive. Just as much as you want to attack through the air, you attack on the ground. You really make the defenses guard every blade of freaking grass. There are so many ways going into the season that LSU just should succeed, and this should go right. I mean, almost even by accident, if you even screw it up. If Joe Sloan, for instance, runs an offense that is almost identical to 2024's, and it drives us nuts. Even with that fact, I still believe that this offense would be better just because you have upgraded personnel in most places, right? And so you would still, by nature of the extra points that would come and stuff, you would still probably should qualify for the playoff. And so my point is, with all of this, is to say there's only two ways here. LSU is successful or LSU fucks it up. LSU is their own worst opponent, their own worst enemy here. Kalen DeBoer isn't someone that should be haunting LSU in the night. Playing Kirby Smart's really soft Georgia team that does not have any identity offensively. That's not a team that should be keeping LSU up in the night. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, who do have some good players, but they've lost way too much in the beef department on the offensive and defensive lines, that where they've lost it where it really matters most. And they don't have as many weapons on the outside, even though they do have a few. And once again, probably looking at a soft ass Lane Kiffin coach defense. Even though he's not a defensive coach, his teams usually tend to have soft defenses for some reason. Or maybe that's just because of what he subjects the defenses on his teams to offensively. Like his offense is way too much up tempo, never controlling the clock or anything. So that's just giving the ball back or scoring drive after scoring drive. So basically your defense is just exhausted. Just exhausted the whole game. Just kind of like the 2019 LSU offense, and what they did to the 2019 LSU defense. You've seen that with Kiffin, where it's not working like the 2019 LSU offense would, but it's still exhausting and wearing out the defense like the 2019 team did. So that doesn't really, Lane Kiffin. Oh my God, Ole Miss. We're really shaking our boots here, but that's still another game you could lose. A&M, Marcel Reed, Mike Elko. They're a team you never think can really challenge LSU, and usually we go into that game kind of bullish, thinking LSU about to wallop this ass, belt to ass. And then what we usually see is something we didn't expect, with A&M. Always LSU versus A&M. It's something you didn't see coming. Well, we'll start our Ask Us Anything section now. We've ranted enough about the 2025 season preview. We've kind of this isn't really our official season preview. It's just kind of a taster of what's to come with the article that we always put one out every season. We love doing this part of this is it is always almost not embarrassing, but it can get embarrassing after for the fact if you're really wrong on some of these things. But then you can look back and be like, oh my God, that was so cool. I predicted Malik Neighbors would have like almost 200 yards, 150 yards a game in 2023, and he did. Hell yeah, like there's those type of things that are really funny, but some big misses too that are equally hilarious. If anybody has any questions of any sort, this is the time. This is the time. This is the time. Looks like we do have quite the substantial audience. 1 second, let me. Okay, wow, we got some questions in here already. Jackson Ola says, what does it look like / what needs to happen for our interior defensive line to perform at a good level? Well, my man, Jackson, thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you for being an LSU Tiger that has amazing taste in their content selection. Um, you know, what does it look like / what needs to happen for our interior D-line to perform at a good level? Well, what I think it needs to be is LSU the last few years. If you look at the defensive line, we would either have two really good, like, run stuffer, kind of double team attracting big type of guys that were really big at really good at clogging things up front, kind of disrupting, but no one who could really penetrate and get into the backfield from the defensive tackle spot. Mekhi Wingo is the best defensive tackle LSU had since Tyler Shelvin in 20 and Braden Fajoko in 2019. For sure, Neil Farrell Jr. had a good year at one point too. I think in 2021, I think 2021, or was it 2022? Neil Farrell Jr. Either way, he had a good year as well. But Mekhi Wingo, who was also an All-American in 2022, he was by far the best defensive tackle for LSU in this era. Jaquelin Roy was good, but really didn't reach the heights that we expected of him to. And this is why you didn't have two defensive tackles that had a strong partnership, just like safeties, just like, maybe corners in some way, but not typically. But usually you've got to have this kind of chemistry with a partnership in those two-man positions where you got to have a guy that can complement the other. One guy is better at run stuffing. He's more rugged. He's more like a traditional linebacker. And then the other linebacker is more speedy, more finesse, more new school, more athletic. And then the other guy is more hold it down, traditional, but also like more disciplined. So you've got two very different schools of thought with these kind of positions, two very different players, but they must complement each other, and they must be different, but they must complement each other and be pulling in the same direction. Defensive tackle, Bernard Gooden as that 3 tech, and then to his left you got either McKinley or Bro. I mean, really, mostly that's actually very attacking from a defensive tackle spot. You've almost got like two different type of penetrating guys there, even though Bro is more of a clogger, double team taker than he is like a straight up 3 tech or something. But he's not like some nose guard or some zero nose or something. But this is a former DE for hell's sakes that we're talking about. But McKinley and Bernard Gooden is probably too extreme of a lineup. You'd probably go Bernard Gooden and Guillory even. Guillory is that clogger. Gooden is that, I'm going to attack at full will. We're coming for you. We're not going to hold the rope, hold the line, and kind of mess some shit up here by just clogging stuff and taking guys into a space. We're just coming at you. There's different ways that you could use Bernard Gooden in that way. And I think if you want a successful defensive tackle tandem for the first time at LSU in a while, and you can't really say a defensive tackle tandem in 2019 with the defense that we had set up under Aranda. It was always a zero nose, with Tyler Shelvin usually as that guy. And you'd only have, it was a 3-4 defense, and it was very. The pass rushing statistics under Aranda were very low, which is insane that Arden Key set the all-time single season sack record at LSU under Dave Aranda, which is very strange. But really, the numbers went really low during Aranda's time at coaching LSU's defense. They're much more of a read and react rather than attack defense. This is the opposite of that. Blake Baker he's coming for you. But then they're also smart enough to be multiple, smart enough to know when to read and react and kind of fool a quarterback who thinks they're, they're bringing the house. And then, oh my God, they have this very exotic blitz where everybody looks like they're blitzing, maybe disguises their blitz, delays their blitz by like a second and a half. So like he's scanning the defense. He goes, "Oh, that guy's held in coverage," and then he starts looking through his progression, and now that guy's coming right for him, and it's someone with Perkins type of speed. Like holy shit! And you got these defensive tackles in the middle, clogging it up, blowing it up. Bernard Gooden intimidating people, backing up his mouth with even bigger play. I mean, for me, I can't be more excited about the defensive tackle spot because we're not even talking about Sadir Mitchell. We're not even talking about Sean Washington. You know, there's more depth and options there than LSU have had in a long time. But it still remains, Jackson, that LSU have to hit to this level defensively for us to really trust it, right? Like we have to be shown, hey, you can stop the run for once in a week 1 game. You know, you did it for like 3 quarters against USC, and we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then Miller Moss went off for almost 400 passing, and they ran the ball on us all over us in that 4th quarter and won the game. You got to be able to be tough in these games up front. And they showed improvement under Blake Baker in year 1. That USC game was hard hitting. It was really hell bent for leather, brutal, violent, guys flying around, real true violent game. But you you feel like this is you didn't have a Major Burns out there again. You're not going to have that. You're not going to have players you cannot trust out there. And maybe I use Major Burns too many times as a example for that because I think Major Burns was wronged in a lot of ways and not really correctly utilized. He was a box safety who was put in coverage way too many times. And no, he just got caught in coverage. Well, if your box safety who's not good at coverage at all is caught in coverage routinely, then your scheme sucks. Like, adjust, change, because they know exactly how to get that guy and isolate him in coverage. Sorry, went down the rabbit hole, but maybe Major Burns is kind of a cheap example I keep throwing out there, so I feel bad about that. But you have some guys out there that maybe you haven't seen play before. AJ Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley, Mansour Delane, Patrick Payton, Jamari Butler, Bernard Gooden. Even you haven't seen him. He was at UCF. There's a lot of guys out there that maybe you haven't seen play for LSU in the purple and gold, so you don't know what the hell we're gonna get, right? Well, I actually believe heavily, and I'm gonna be very stunned about this because here's the thing: we've done a lot of film into all these guys, and we've written a lot about every one of these guys. You can go onto the site and type in any of these guys' names and find at least 2, 3, 4 articles just on the player themselves, let alone like articles going into their position group and how they fit into this to the whole nexus of it all of that stuff. We're not saying we know everything or any of that. We're not saying that type of crap. What I'm trying to say is that we've gone into very intensive detail with so many of these players. Tried to cover everyone that we can. And from what I've seen, every one of these additions, a Tamarcus Cooley, an AJ Halsey, a Barian Brown, these guys. I mean, even the freshman that you brought in, a DJ Pickett who could start for you at corner. Um, you've brought in some absolute majestic upgrades that should absolutely turn LSU into a championship contending team that they should have been for the last 4 years. Maybe you could say the pandemic year was just going to be a collapse into now situation to quote an REM album. But it just seemed like it was going to be a bad season to just start off, But after that, there's no excuses. No excuses. LSU should always be doing good in every season. You have the talent alone in Louisiana to at least make a New Year's Six bowl level type of game every year, and LSU falls short of that. And Brian Kelly is right when he said in that Netflix documentary, when he said in multiple interviews, hey, when I showed up here, they weren't anywhere close to their standards. Their standards had slipped. He was right. He was right. You know how many times you heard Coach O talk about the LSU Tigers standard of performance? The LSU Tigers standard of performance. He'd always be saying that. And after midway through 2020, because I listened to every interview that man did, every interview, just like with Kelly, and he stopped using that term once the opt-outs, once the George Floyd protests happened. He almost seemed to just kind of lose interest of where football was going, and all he would talk about was we need to get vaccinated, and we're gonna beat everybody, and this guy is gonna be an all SEC player, and that guy wouldn't even play that year, like he said that about multiple different guys. Nothing but extremely positive, fake stuff about every player, and that's why maybe we should respect the fact that Brian Kelly will say stuff like about Patrick Payton, that he wasn't ready to play his position yet. He had stuff to learn. He'll actually give it to you straight. So maybe, you can shit on Brian Kelly or whatever you say, he's a politician, but I actually find him to be a lot more honest, even to his own detriment, than a lot of other head coaches. But sorry, Jackson, that we went way down the rabbit hole of answering your question. But for me, an interior defensive line to perform at a good level, you've got to have that yin and yang. You've got to have that complementary forces. You've got to have that bruiser, clogger kind of protection wrecker who can also stuff the run, and then you got to have a dude who can penetrate and get into the backfield, who can actually pass rush, get his hands up, have that length, have that brute force, have that sneaky speed to have the moves. But most of all, you need those two to be physical as hell. And hey, if they need to be more conservative and just kind of open things up for the edge rushing, fine with me. I don't need, my DTs to have 5 or 6 sacks to know that they did awesome that season. I rewatch the games just like all of you should too, and most of you do. Because football is a very interesting game and complex game, and there's a lot going on that everyone misses, including myself, every single play. And so it's almost required, in my opinion, to watch it multiple times, or else you're not really grasping what happened. And so for a defensive line play, you want that yin and yang, you want that complementary forces together. And so like you wouldn't have Sadir Mitchell and Jacobian Guillory as a tandem. That's just too much beef, too much weight, too much. I mean, you could scheme against that pretty well as an offensive coordinator. You need some type of speed, some type of athleticism from your interior defensive line. And that's what we've been missing. People think we've been missing the beef, the weight, the girth, the push. And it's like, yes, we've missed the push, but we've also just missed this type of finesse power from a defensive tackle. We haven't had like a dude with power and finesse. Only like Mekhi Wingo fits that bill. Mason Smith had some moments. He had a 3-sack game that was incredible. He had these moments. Jaquelin Roy had moments. Tyler Shelvin had a lot of moments and played a key role in that 2019 season. But defensive tackle play, we haven't really seen it be as comprehensive or as cohesive as it could and should be for LSU, brother. Jackson Ola says, also love all your work getting me hyped for this season, dude. That is all I needed to hear. That is all I needed to hear. Sorry for like that 5-minute answer to your freaking question, but as you can tell, I'm pretty hyped too. Thank you for watching, brother. This is awesome. This is awesome. And comment more, Jackson. We need more good opinions like that, good questions like that, because the defensive tackle, the interior defensive line positions, so neglected by LSU fans, and that has been really a nexus of our issues the last few years, where you saw key injuries to Mekhi Wingo ahead of key losses, right? Against Alabama. We lost Mekhi Wingo before that game in 2023. Maybe we could have done something, if you had someone up the middle to at least have some type of blowing up the protection scheme, blowing up something, blowing up just a little bit of the offensive line play, maybe getting in the backfield just a little bit more to change. I can't remember the name of that Alabama quarterback's name. He thought he was the Heisman. He was like, give me that shit. He's that running quarterback. I can't remember his name. It's driving me nuts right now. Oh, he throws like garbage, but he's such a great rushing quarterback. Can't remember his name right now, but that's because I'm not an Alabama fan. But I don't know how I can't remember his name right now, but he just ate us alive in the running game. Ate us alive, and it was because there was nothing there to really attack him. There was nothing there disturbing the offensive line. We now have guys all over this defense who are, if they're not going to be attacking, I don't know what football player is going to be. Like a guy like Jack Pyburn, a guy like Whit Weeks, if they don't have like a crazy hell bent for leather, hair on fire, just absolutely wrecking fools type of season, I would go back to church full time. I'd be like, this is nuts. This is incredible. I can't believe it. Jalen Milroe. That's it, Jackson. Jalen Milroe. Jackson with the save there. Jalen Milroe ate us alive. We should talk about that. We should talk about that. The rushing quarterback stuff. But we'll stay focused on your guys' questions. Thank you, Jackson. I knew that name. I knew it, but I was like, oh, it's killing me. But it's an Alabama player, so whatever. King Cole Adams. What's up, brother? He says the defense is lit. The offensive skills are lit. O-line is a big question mark. I think if Thompson, which he's referring to Josh Thompson, our potential starting right guard, I think if Thompson can set this O-line play to play, we can do this. So you said, okay, let me read this again because I interrupted the comment. He says, the defense is lit. The offensive skills are lit. O-line is a big question mark. I think if Josh Thompson can set this O-line play to play, we can do this. Thompson is, he's got a lot of experience, almost 1,500 snaps. And he's only allowed 2 sacks in the last few seasons. And only, I think it was 3 in his entire career. So, really good, consistent player at Northwestern. This is a whole different league, whole different athlete he's playing against. And he's had some struggles, but he's also experienced enough to be crafty. Josh Thompson. He's experienced enough to be crafty and to dig in and fight. And I think you've seen, at least I should say, not you've seen, but I've seen some film of him at practice where he's done some things that have surprised me. He's been beaten on some plays that surprised me, but those were by great players who I expected to really give our offensive line hell. And remember, it's always going to favor the O-line when you're sorry, not favor the O-line. It's always going to favor the attacking position over the kind of stationary position when you're doing a practice. It's just going to. And it's almost like, offensive line are waiting to get hit in a way. And then they kind of wake up, get in the flow of things, and then they're meeting that attack and that contact with their own. You know what I'm saying? So Thompson, he's likely going to be your starting right guard. Thompson's likely going to be your starting right guard, and then you're going to have at left guard probably. If I were to bet, it would be Chester right now. Your tackles, Tyree, of course, left tackle, right tackle, Weston Davis, and then Josh Thompson is your right guard. Braylon Moore is your center. The Braylon Moore for sure, the best offensive lineman on the team. I just, I think if this offensive line comes right out of the gates and plays like garbage, I would hesitate to completely bag on them because of the monumental task in front of them. A monumental task in front of them to really get this right quick. Everyone unfamiliar. You've got to get that chemistry quick. And Nussmeier's been trying to do it. He's taking his guys out for these big dinners. He's trying to get that camaraderie going. And where does football chemistry really come from? It comes from that brotherhood off the field. It comes from that brotherhood in the locker room. It comes from that brotherhood you're hanging out on the Fridays, Saturday nights, after the games, before the games, getting into all sorts of hijinks. That's where that kind of like chemistry comes from and is born out of. And that's where it kind of begins, is in those experiences, in those friendships. And not saying everyone has to be friends to be successful on a football field, but man, does it help. But that offensive line is a big question mark. The defense should be damn good, but that offensive line, that offensive scheme, not just the offensive line itself, but the offensive scheme around the O-line. Are we going to be willing to be patient with the running game? Do we have the depth at running back if we have like one injury to continue? It's some of the injuries and the missing in actions due to legal stuff or transfers. LSU have some worries at running back, in my opinion. If we lose just one guy, or one guy doesn't perform to their optimum, you're already seeing Juwan Johnson really climb up the roster due to that. But no, I think you're right, King Cole. Obviously the O-line is the biggest question mark on the team, but I think it would be so cool to see this LSU O-line come out week one and absolutely just dominate Clemson's front. Like just maul them into a corner, steal their lunch money, and have them calling their mom to come pick them up before second period's even begun. Like just complete bullying of that desecrated program known as Clemson, the fake Death Valley, the fake Tigers, a team that LSU has owned in two different national championship games, 1958 and 2019. This game means a lot as far as bragging rights, as far as just optics. You cannot lose this game. And you look at the offensive line going into this game, and there is a ton of worry, and it's hard to know where it's going to go, man. It's going to just be all right, let's go, game on. It's going to be a situation where you just have to, let's see. King Cole Adams says, my concern is when BK says we have a really good O-line. I go back to his grading system from last year. He said there's good, there's great, and then there's elite. Championships are elite. What do you, one sec. Okay. Okay, I see what you're saying. So Kelly's own words said that there's 3 categories of O-line. There's good, there's great, and there's elite. You're saying championship guys, O-lines are elite, and he only says we're a really good O-line. That's true. He said we're really good. That was his words. And I do remember that grading system thing. But even though the 2019 offense was thought of as a juggernaut and was, that offensive line had a lot of deficiencies, even though they won the Joe Moore Award, which just goes to show you how these awards are given out. They had a lot of big issues on that O-line that were masked by a very quick fire, up tempo offense that got the football out of Joe's hands, just boom, 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 boom. And when they didn't, you saw what happened. 3rd and 17, Joe was literally fighting for his damn life, nearly gets crushed. What happened to Joe with James Skalski against Clemson? Joe got his ribs broken in that championship game, in a game we were down by 10 points at one point. Like, Skalski had to get ejected out of that game, I think, to really stop even though we were getting momentum, he was Clemson's best defensive player, and he was keeping them in the game, holding us to field goals, stuff like that. And even though we were getting close to that double-digit lead, he was keeping them in that game. Just one too many hard hits, targeting on Jefferson, and he was gone. But that O-line let Joe take a ton of hits. And the Joe Moore Award and some of the draft picks from that O-line and how good those guys have been in the NFL kind of papers over those cracks. But the truth remains that there was a lot of loose play on the O-line in 2019, even then. So it just goes to show that if you run an offense that is fast-paced, up-tempo, you can maybe make the offensive line a non-factor. You can do things in this game that make a certain weakness a non-factor. You can get creative and do that. The question is Joe Sloan creative enough, willing enough to change, to do that? Or are we going to see another kind of tepid 2024 offense that we saw where, you put up a ton of yards, you looked really pretty going up and down the field, and then you could not score to save your life down in the red zone. You couldn't do it. And then even when you got close to the red zone, you'd kill it with horrible penalties. And it would be like, how is Will Campbell making so many penalties? And it's not all just on Will Campbell. It's also the whole setup of the whole thing, the whole structure of the whole thing, the calls, everything is screwing these guys up who are, top 5 picks. So Joe Sloan he's got a lot to really answer for and to really say, hey, I'm up to that task. And I personally root for Joe Sloan. But I don't sugarcoat things. I don't lie about things. I think he's a cool dude. I really hope he is successful at LSU. He's been nothing but good to us. But the truth is the truth. Gotta deliver. This is an offense that is absolutely a home run type of offense. We knew going into last year that this offense might be kind of up or down here. And how are we going to run the ball? Who knows? This season, there's zero excuses. Cole Adams says, I feel like the center has to call out the responsibility for each player on the O-line. And that's what Braylon Moore was brought in for, man. And that's why I think Braylon Moore is perfect for that spot. He's going to know how to get guys into gear, how to get guys going. I think you've already seen it a bit, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter how many like great individual guys you have on an O-line. If you don't all play as one, you're screwed. You're screwed. I mean, look at all the great O-lines, even just the good O-lines, the serviceable ones. They all move in the same direction. It's almost like watching art, watching a great offensive line, moving and just mauling people. It's something beautiful about it. And we haven't seen that except for a few stretches here and there for LSU. We just haven't seen it. There were some games where we've been able to do that against some kind of weaker teams, but we just haven't seen it at LSU enough. We have not seen the Tigers control games like they should. We have not seen LSU dictate terms to the opponent like they used to. And that time is now. The time is now to start dictating terms to the opponent, saying, we are LSU. We walk into this stadium already knowing we better than you, boy. We're about to kick your ass. And really just like settling down to set it off. Like, oh, you think I'm chill? You think I'm chilling? And then I beat the shit out of you. Come over and just absolutely knock the shit out of you. Knock your helmet off. Those are that's football language, not violent language. Football language. YouTube, don't do anything with that. That's the mindset LSU needs to have, is one of a commitment to violence. And that might sound stark and it might sound sickening, but that is the reality that LSU needs to pursue here to go to that level. Because this offense is going to need help. It's not just going to be, hey, get us Myers going to throw 7-8 touchdowns every game. We're going to win these shootouts 58-35. You're not going to win a national championship doing that. I just feel like this offense is going to need that help. They're going to need that kind of helping hand to get them over the hump. They're going to need a defense that's at least top 50. Not just a defense that kind of makes some plays and kind of putters around. A defense that actually kicks some ass, takes some names, makes a difference. A defense that takes the football away. Hell, this is a stat that is incredible. LSU's defense only had 6 interceptions last year. Do you know that? Did you know that? Let me repeat that. LSU's defense only caught 6 interceptions last year. Do you know that like every one of our championship teams had 19 at the lowest and most of them had 25 plus? Like 6 interceptions last year? Listen to this stat. They had 6 interceptions last year, the entirety of the LSU defense, not just the secondary. The entirety of the defense just had 6 interceptions. Cooley, Halsey, and Delane all combined for 12 just last season. So the 3 transfers we brought in had 12 picks last year. Our entire defense last year had half of that with 6. If there isn't an upgrade when you're bringing in a Cooley, a Halsey, those type of numbers, I don't know. It would almost be hard to even blame it on Kelly, because it would be like, are we just cursed at this point? Like, what's going on here? Like, he pushed every right button. How did this not work? Like, because Brian Kelly has pushed every right button this offseason, whether you like him or not, or part of the chorus of haters that he has, whatever. If you're a part of that, fine. But actually have some evidence to back up the kind of the slanderous shit you say, and also leave family members out of it too. That's what's gross. And third, understand that this guy has pushed every right button going into this season, that like he's navigated some really rocky waters, and he's been able to retain a lot of key pieces to what could be a championship team, to actually give this program a chance to compete for a championship. If a lot of other coaches are in this position, maybe we lose Perkins to the draft. Maybe we lose Garrett Nussmeier. Hey, I don't want to play for this guy for another season. You don't know what happens. Brian Kelly's pushed every right button going into this offseason, thanks to, not just Kelly, but the people he hired, the people that Scott Woodward has hired. Maybe the people that Brian Kelly didn't want to hire, or maybe fired previously and was forced to rehire. But regardless, they're there and it's working. You bring in Sam freaking Petito to be on your backroom staff. You bring back Jeff Martin. There's a feeling in the air, and I don't know if I'm just biased or whatever, but I have a feeling that LSU are really capable of doing something special this season. I don't know what it will be. I don't know how it could happen, but I've to quote the Beatles, I've got a feeling deep inside. Oh yeah. If you don't know that song, then just stop and just stop. Like, if you don't know the Beatles and you only know that Ice Spice or some terrible artist like that, like Billie Eilish, then just I'm sorry. I guess we can't win. It's not music, but the Beatles, that's music, baby. Yeah. We went from Braylon Moore to the Beatles, man. That response went from Braylon Moore to the Beatles. Cole Adams says, if the O-line dominates, it's 2019 all over again. I mean, that could be possible. And with a defense that could be I'm not going to say better than the 2019 defense, because that defense was unbelievable with the guys it had and the plays it made. This defense could be stingier. Not as much star power, but they could maybe allow less points and stuff like that. But 2019, I don't know about that. I mean, we could win a championship with this group and compete for a championship, come close to winning one, but 2019, nah, I wouldn't say 2019 all over again. Like, even if it's a high flying offense, I mean, it's just like, go back and watch a reel of like all the 2019 touchdowns, which there's YouTube videos of all this stuff from 2019, because it's just crazy. And watch some of these videos and kind of refresh your memory of just how unreal that team was. And then maybe you'll be like, okay, it's going to take something ridiculous to get there. And that's why Jaden Daniels was thought of as being so close to Burrow in that respect, because Jaden Daniels was doing things with his legs that Burrow was doing with his arm. Well, and let's also remember Burrow also had 5 rushing touchdowns too that season. So I mean, he did some big stuff with his legs as well. But this is the time. This is the time where 2019, this comparison, that comparison, it's I I don't want to go there yet. We need to take this. We need to beat Clemson first. Because if we can't beat Clemson, I mean, it literally is 6 years from your last opening win, and that would be when Burrow was on the field and we were beating Georgia Southern. That's just insanity to me. That's just insanity. Cole Adams says, I think Sloan can call the right plays. We didn't have a wide receiver to take the top off until Hilton came back. Every defense was cheating the line of scrimmage. It was day and night when Hilton returned. That's true, but still, we could not run the ball as effectively. So we'll see how we can run the football when Hilton and everything is back. And hey, if Hilton goes down with an injury, we have a few guys that we've brought onto the team now who can very much so replicate what he does, so we're not just screwed, which was a huge issue last year. Like, you lost Hilton and you knew your offense was one dimensional. The defense could really put everybody in the box because they knew you're not going to take the top off us, which was crazy that we wouldn't at least take some shots down there, but we didn't have the speed to do it. So that's a great point. That is a very great point because look at the 2019 offense without like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and say you just have like a young Terrace Marshall as like your number one guy, and then like Racey McMath and Trey Palmer and some of those guys. Like, that's your receiving core, and maybe you can even throw Thad Moss in there. You're going to put up a lot of yards, but you're not going to be able to take the top off anybody. That's kind of the good comparison, is like you didn't have Justin or Jamar taking the top off. Chris Hilton is the fastest LSU Tiger to ever play for the football program. I want that to be known on the record as well. 4.21. Just ridiculous. They measured it and announced that LSU football officially. It was like, whoa, fastest LSU Tiger to ever play for the program. And I think you're going to see him and Nuss connect on some big time plays. And that is where the offensive line must hang in there tough. On these downfield shots, dropping back, unloading big downfield shots down the field to Chris Hilton Jr., Barry Brown. This offensive line absolutely has to keep Nuss safe. No low shots. There's a few too many low shots last year. I know there was barely any hits on Nuss, barely any sacks in comparison to other quarterbacks. But it seemed like every time he was hit, it was like low, and it was like, oh my God. Cole Adams says, Kelly put $1 million of his own money into this program. I don't want to hear he doesn't want it bad enough unless you're contributing 10% of your salary. I mean, remember this, though. The dude is extremely well off. Over $100 million of wealth, and he's making it from the state taxpayer funds. So, I mean, like $1 million matching the $1 million, like that's fantastic. And But we don't really know where that money's coming from. We don't know exactly how he's doing that. We're kind of just taking the word of everyone doing this. I'm not saying he's lying, but I like to see some proof of that first, like because that's a chunk of change, and I want to see if it's coming from him himself or like the Brian Kelly Foundation, which would mean it could be anybody's money. You know as well as me, there's these people who start these charities who that become basically money laundering things, and he's got the Kelly Cares Foundation. That's what it is, Kelly Cares. So I'm sure it was through Kelly Cares, so he wouldn't have to personally pay it. So I'm not trying to rip on that sacrifice or make any point about that sacrifice. We literally wrote an article saying that he put his money where his mouth is more than any college coach had ever done in the NIL era, and how he was a trailblazer in the NIL era. While people were going to rip on him and say, your coach has to pony up his own money because you guys are your university is too cheap. And it's like, exactly. And that's kind of the point Kelly's making is like, this is embarrassing. I'm having to put up my own money. Like, but I will because I want the success. And so your point is correct. He's at least willing to put that money away, whether it's from his foundation, whether it's from his personal bank account. He's willing to say, hey, money on the table. I want a championship. Let's go. And maybe that money provided just barely enough for us to get Bernard Gooden. Maybe it just barely got us Braylon Moore. You never know. Cole Adams says, which quarterback had more passing yards their first year? Burrow, JD5, or Nuss? It was Nuss by far. Nuss has had more first year passing yards than any quarterback in LSU history. And in fact, in his first year passing as a starter, Nuss is now, with kind of the minimal stats he had earlier, but he had a few big games in his first 3 years, but still, only a couple outings, a lot of bench outings. He his stats are still like he could be the number one quarterback in LSU history passing the football at the end of this season if he just eclipses 3,343 yards. If he replicates what he did last year, he's going to be LSU's all-time leading passer. If he even just kind of replicates it. Yeah, I mean, people are so touchy on the Brian Kelly stuff, whether they're for Kelly or hate him or whatever. Like, people are really so touchy on the whole thing that they can't analyze him accurately. And usually, his biggest supporters and proponents are the ones to kind of shit on him first after a loss and lose their minds. I've seen it. I know the people who've done it. Like, we all know their names. And so it's just kind of interesting, that whole thing. Leighton Lamb says, excited for the practice reports tonight, Lon. Well, as you know, the scrimmage has no media access. They're doing it in I think they're going to start in the next hour, but I think they're going to start at sunset actually. So they're going to go out when it's night, replicate a night game, replicate the environment of a night game at Death Valley. No media access whatsoever, even for the favorites. Even for the favorites, like Jacques or Wilson, even they don't get to go in. Nobody, and they're gonna do this. But we're gonna be able to get information like we always do, and we'll be able to disseminate those chunks of info. And I hate to say it, but usually an injury happens in one of these scrimmages, almost like clockwork. And I'm not hoping for it. I'm not wishing for it, but I'm definitely ready for it if it happens. Because it happens every single year, an injury in one of these damn scrimmages. So we really got to just make sure nobody gets hurt and just you want to practice full on. You want to practice the tackling, and you want to make sure we're good at tackling, and make sure we're hard nosed and we're hitting hard and all this stuff. But you also don't want to go into this season that could be 17 games long, already beat up. You gotta. It's like dancing on wire. It really is tough to do this, to manage this without these injuries occurring. They're just going to happen. It's just the nature of the game. But that's really my biggest hope, is just no more injuries. No more injuries. Leighton Lamb says, "Oh damn, did not realize there was no media access." Yeah, I was looking at my email of like the media. It says like media opportunities. Yeah, and I'm looking at it. It says scrimmage Saturday, and then it says like my eyes are just looking at it like it says media access, blah 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 blah, and then like I see it says in all caps no, and I'm like, oh, whoa, no access for the scrimmage, whoa. No access for the damn scrimmage? That is weird, and I know why that's going on. I know why that's happening, and it's not just because, hey, we don't want you in here. We're LSU football. We're gonna play a play a scrimmage here. Like Kelly loves to have the media there for these things. There's a very specific reason why the media is not going to be at that practice, or at that scrimmage, I should say. And that's all I'll say about that. And actually, I know I'm going to say and reveal more, so I'm going to have to log off here because I just cannot do that. And we're going to try another show later on. Everybody, thank you so much. We will continue more of these type of things as many times as you guys like. So thank you for hopping on with us, and tell us through DM or post on our wall on Twitter or something, and tell us, comment section here on YouTube, wherever, and tell us where the best time for you would be, and kind of maybe things that you would like to see from us as far as content, things like that. But yeah, visit and subscribe at LSUODYSSEY.com. Subscribe and follow us on X/Twitter at Lon Phillips, Instagram at LSU Odyssey Lon. Everybody, thank you so much. This has been a thrill. This has been a chill. And now we've got a Saturday night to kill, baby. Let's go. Saturday night, baby. Let's go.